Hello, and welcome back to the podcast. So it's been a while. It's definitely been a few months since I last put out an episode, and today's topic is something I get asked a lot about. It's something I see a lot with clients, and it's a bit of a sticky conversation to dive into, but it's definitely worth exploring. So in this episode, I'm going to be talking primarily about situationships, what they are, what they're not, the difference between a situationship and say like a friends with benefits situation, casual dating, and just really diving into the signs to make it clear on how to recognize if you're navigating this kind of situation. I mean, like there are very clear signs that you're in a situationship, like the impact that's having on you and how it's playing out. But I suppose I'll dive in and I'll get started with the definition. So, realistically, what a situationship is, it's a romantic or an intimate relationship that isn't clearly defined by both parties, right? There's no clear commitment, there's no clear conversations about future direction, what it is, what it isn't. Now, what is specific to this is there could be a romantic or sexual component to this relationship, but the way I like to explain it is it's like the person's getting the full girlfriend or boyfriend experience. There's more for one party, maybe more of an emotional investment in it. They could be spending quality time together. They could be going on dates. They could be doing things, albeit it might be inconsistent. It might run hot and cold. There might be a very strong sexual element to it. But at the root of this, there's no clear definition as to what this is, where it's going, the roles, labels, language around that. And the thing is, it's not about judging, if somebody is maybe opting for this and there's full transparency around it, because, for some people, especially when they're getting into casual dating, it gives them space they explore what they want to try and figure out, you know, what kind of dynamic suits them. Just to get an experience at dating, it could be convenience, it might be taking the pressure off themselves, they have it all figured out. It might be just being able to slow the pace of things to be able to figure out like who the person is, if they like them, if they don't like them. There's a whole stack of reasons as to why people don't like putting definitions and labels on things. And then there's also like the gray area where people can get exploited, they can get fucked over, manipulated, and it can cause a lot of harm, whether it's directly or indirectly. Now, the thing is, it will benefit one of the people, or even in some stages, it might benefit both people through convenience, but it does lack structure. It will lack future direction. There might be no conversation about long term plans, about definite commitment, exclusivity, for example. Like, are we seeing other people? Are we not seeing other people? And as I mentioned before, like, there is, for the most part, with the situationship scenario, one person will be primarily more emotionally invested, say, maybe than the other. And this is where they're given maybe more than what they're receiving in terms of like the energy exchange and the relationship. And this is where I see it as like the full boyfriend, full girlfriend experience. They're getting that benefit of the partnership without any of the commitment, without any of the obligation, without any of the labels. They're not having to really amend any of their changes in their lifestyle. They might still be seeing other people. They might still be running hot and cold, dropping in and out of the person's life. And the thing is, like, what's underneath that sometimes is a fear of speaking up, a fear of using your voice to communicate your expectations, to communicate your boundaries, to communicate your standards. Fear of rocking the boat in case, if I do voice this, maybe I'll get rejected. Maybe this will end. It's better to have this than they have nothing. And underneath this, sometimes there can be a very strong physical sexual attraction, and that can keep people stuck. Like I've seen that so many times. And it can be really, really challenging to let that go, especially if you're in a season in your life where you're finding dating really difficult. And it's like maybe it's seen as the lesser of two evils. Well, this is predictable. I can kind of navigate this on my own terms, even though it's causing you harm. And the problem with this is, and this is where I've seen it, it might start out intentionally, being a bit in the gray, like not really sure what this is, where it's going, and all the rest of it. But then if you don't take control of the situation, if you don't allow yourself to communicate, if you don't allow yourself to express your boundaries, standards, and expectations, it is going to cost you your time, because I've seen scenarios where this has went on for years. And people slip into that pattern without realizing that it's happening. They give up years of their time. They're caught in this limbo where they're not able to fully detach. So because they're not able to fully let it go, they can't then call in a partner that will step up, that will meet their needs, that will be what they need them to be, because they're still holding on to the fantasy of what this could be if only certain things would change. And as I said, the other person could be out shagging rings around them. The exclusivity piece isn't there. Sometimes you may find these situations playing out where maybe the other person's in a relationship. There could be multiple ways that these dynamics unfold. And why this is different from a friends with benefits arrangement, just to make this distinction, because there is that conversation around what this is and what this isn't. So in the friends with benefits situation, for example, there is that communication of, look, this is just physical, it's just sex, it's just hooking up. If either person starts to develop feelings or starts to get to a place of falling in love with the other person, there's the conversation around, boundaries, expectations, if this needs to stop, because there is that acknowledgement that we're not looking for anything serious. This isn't going anywhere. Yada yada yada. Within a situationship, it's more ambiguous, and sometimes it can be intentionally kept ambiguous. It can be intentionally kept vague. One person can be doing this or giving mixed signals to be able to exploit the other person. They manipulate the other person. They could be promising things, just not delivering, not following through in the things that they're saying, and at the same time still benefiting from all the perks of being with a person that's treating them like their full-time partner without, as I said, any of the commitment. And the problem is, for the person that's on the other side of that dynamic, they're forming an attachment, they're forming an emotional bond and a connection with that person. They're actually falling in love. They're still clinging to the fantasy of what could be, and it's going to cause them harm over time. And the thing is, like, there's a lot of chaos. There can be a lot of instability. There can be a lot of fluctuations of running hot and cold. There can be a lot of highs and lows, and it can be consuming. And that can pull people into these kinds of dances, especially when we look at like unhealed trauma, attachment dynamics, the types of partners that we're drawn to. But it creates anxiety, it creates stress, it creates upheaval, and it keeps people from being able to move forward. So your own personal growth, your own personal development, your own ability to step forward and navigate what you want for your life is kind of put on hold when you're caught in these kinds of dynamics. So, and the way I see it, like, anybody can end up in this situation. I've seen some very, very intelligent, very accomplished men and women fall into these dances because they want to be wanted. They want somebody to fully choose them. And there's elements of the closeness that they experience when they're in these dynamics that keeps them coming back. And the problem is, it's not fully real, and the sense that it's costing you more than what you're getting, in terms of what you're given. You're getting crumbs of connection, you're getting crumbs of intimacy, you're not getting the whole person, but you in yourself are not being fully chosen as well. And I think the longer that goes on, the more harm that causes the sense of self, the self-worth, the self-esteem. And as I mentioned earlier, it holds you back from being able to show up in the dating space and actually call on somebody who really does fully want to be with you. And look, as I said, one of the worst things about this could be somebody who's intentionally keeping it in the grey, keeping it in that murky, blurred, lined area with no intention, absolutely zero intention of ever fully committing. So one of the other signs around this is, and aspects of it, they could be trying to keep you secret. They mightn't even be letting on that they're seeing you, or they might dip in and out of your life very inconsistently. You might be aware of certain things that are going on in their life, like they might open up about maybe things that their parents are going through, struggles that they're having at work. Jesus, they might even be talking about the actual relationship that they're in and how terrible it is, and parking it with you. But one of the signs that you're in a dynamic like that is that there might be no overlap or intersection with each other's networks. So these are kept apart, and it's the separateness within that. Now, your network might be aware of this person, and this person's network may or may not be aware of you, but the mixing of the two is maybe unlikely, within these situationships. And I already mentioned like the non-exclusivity piece. So you might be very aware that they're still meeting other people. You yourself might not be, because you're hung up on this person. You might find it very difficult to get them out of your head to be able to move forward. And it, again, is causing all that anxiety, upheaval, stress, rumination, dysregulation in the nervous system as well. Now, the problem within this as well, if you are seeking connection and you're trying to not lock this person down, but if you're trying to even arrange things with this person, it could be last minute, it could be inconsistent. You might find yourself being stood up, blew off, unless there's maybe an element of where this is just about sex for that person. I've seen that quite a lot as well, where Everything is centered around the idea of them getting their needs met at your expense. Now, the thing is, when it's impulsive, when it's inconsistent, and when they're just dropping in and out, it's completely dysregulating for you as a human being as well, because then you're finding that you'll have to shift your plans to be able to accommodate them, to be able to get some sense of connection, but it's on their terms. And that's the thing that is really kind of noticeable. You know, the communication might be very erratic, it might be very sporadic, it might be wishy washy, it might just be they could ghost you for weeks at a time, then drop back into your life. You know, there's no real effort or intentionality around them prioritizing what the connection is. Now, I did say about the emotional presence, and the emotional availability and that ability to connect fully with another person. You might find that the conversations could be heavily one-sided, or they might be shallow, or you know, the other extreme is also possible too. They could be dumping and venting a lot of their stuff onto you without actually being able to hold space for you, without being able to show up for you. So you could be going through something very difficult in your life, they mightn't be able to hold space for you, they mightn't be able to show you in that way that they care about you. You know, it's just this thing of, it kind of is what it is, and you have that realization that it is fully on this person's terms. When I see them, I get snippets of who they are, I get aspects of what they allow me to see. You know, the connections on their terms. It's when it suits them. And for you, it's about, well, how do you then get your needs met when you're in a dynamic like that? And it's so hard to break that cycle when you're in it, because the longer you're in it, the more it affects your sense of self and your self-worth. And what you find, or what I found, you know, just observing this, is that there is that avoidance, there is that conflict avoidance, there is that fear of speaking up, the fear of rocking the boat, the fear of ruining things, be trying to put a label on something, be trying to define it. And the thing is, if it's real, if it was genuinely real, and it was genuinely rooted in like it being a heartfelt connection and about it going somewhere, like, it will never really feel like when it's the right time to have the conversation. But the truth is, with the right partner, it's one of those things, like, lean into the conversation, have it. You shouldn't feel like you're being actively deterred, or like there's ambiguity constantly being put on what this is and what this isn't, and where this is going and where it's not going, because you have every right to be able to define things for your own peace of mind, for your own sense of future direction, for your own sense of control. And that's the thing, like, you can't evolve as a human being, you can't evolve in a relationship or as a couple if there's no clear boundary, definition, rule, or label as to what this is and what this isn't. And I might be repeating myself a lot here, but that is one of the most important things to keep coming back to. And the thing is, certain individuals will purposely keep that distance. They'll purposely dip in and out of your life. They'll purposely give you those mixed signals. They'll say they want one thing, but they'll do another. They might talk about how you're the best thing for them, and about if they would only commit if it wasn't just for this, that, and the other. But then that's the discrepancy between looking at the words and the actions. Like, what are they doing outside of that? Are they meeting other people? Are they texting other people? Are they sleeping with other people? You know, look at the impact that this is having on you longer term. Like, each money rejection, each time they don't show up for you, each time they take you for granted, each time you feel like it's been one sided, or if it's just based on sex, like, how do you come away from them interactions feeling in yourself? Like, and look, if you're somebody who gets anxious, like really anxious when you're dating, you don't want to find yourself in a situation like this. If you're somebody that struggles with trust issues, if you're somebody that knows what they want, and you want to come out of partnership, you want to have that full sense of trust and security that the person wants the same thing as you, that will 100% require you to use your voice, to actually lean in and establish your expectations, your boundaries, and your standards around what you will and won't accept. And if that other person can't meet those needs, or won't commit, or is purposely like giving you this rhetoric around, well, I would if only for this, or blah, 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 then it is on you, in my eyes, to exit that situation and prioritize your own well being first and foremost, because the cost is too great in that situation, in terms of your well being, in terms of your time, in terms of the emotional upheaval, in terms of the harm that it can cause to the sense of self. And look, the thing is, if I'll give you an example, if it's being kept a secret, or if it's just about the sex, or if it's, you know, the whole idea of who you are and how that person uses you at their expense, like, that is not good for any human being to be exposed to that over a period of time, because there is going to be an attachment, there is going to be bonding on some level. And if they can operate up from that place of being detached, but you can't, your duty of care and responsibility is to yourself in that situation. Like, You can't ignore that. You can't overlook it. Like, so some thoughts just on situationships, and I know I feel like I'm rambling, but I'm hoping this is going to resonate for somebody because I get a lot of messages about varying aspects of these dynamics. Never ever assume when you're meeting somebody that it's exclusive. Have the conversation, define it, lean into it. Don't be fearful about acknowledging what a label is. If somebody tells you they don't want a relationship, listen to them. Like, acknowledge it. Don't overlook it. Do not, like, wait against hope that they're going to somehow change your mind, and you're just still going to keep giving them the VIP experience of a partnership without any of the commitment, without any of the benefit, because they will take it for granted, and they have been upfront and vocal about what they want and what they don't want. So it's on you to enforce your standards within that. You can, even in a situationship, you can fall in love with a person. You can really develop a profound relationship with them, despite it being quite harmful and despite it being quite damaging, depending on the behavior that's going on. And you can, like, fall in love with them, you can care about them. And that can compound how difficult it is to end these types of relationships, and the breakups and the fucking exits around these types of dynamics can be really, really difficult. Often, I've helped a lot of people navigate this professionally, and when they're in it, it's consuming. It can be so hard for them to see the wood from the trees because of how long they've been dealing with this situation. But it's so important when you catch that you're really struggling with your feelings and you're really struggling with this dynamic, that you allow yourself support to be able to move through this, because it's so hard to do it on your own, especially if it's been kept secret, especially if there's shame, judgment, embarrassment, or if there's toxic behavior going on, or if there's a risk to your safety going forward. There could be coercive or emotionally abusive behavior going on here as well. So, as I said, it's not just this clear cut thing of just call ties and see you later. Like, I completely understand that people fall in love. I can fully appreciate the grief that comes with even letting go of a situationship. But the thing is, you have to look at it for what it is and what it's not, and also what it's holding you back from in terms of being able to co-create what you actually want with a proper partner, with somebody that's fully invested, that can show up for you. And this is where the murky gray kind of space becomes like a bit fucking sticky when we talk about situationships. If we don't define what a relationship is, then is it fully appropriate to establish expectations around behavior, establish expectations around commitment, establish expectations around communication, about follow through, about what you want, what you don't want, if we can't even lean into the conversation around what it is and what it isn't. And that's why those conversations have to happen. It's like communication's the oxygen for any relationship. And I think even when we talk about intimacy, communication's your lubrication. So you can't stay in this place of avoidance and hope that the person's just suddenly going to change their mind or read your mind or suddenly start appreciating everything that you're giving them without any kind of commitment. You have to learn to use your voice, even if it's trembling, even if you're scared, even if you're worried that it's going to go tits up and they're going to break things off. Show up for yourself, advocate for yourself, speak up. And, like, look, it's not about ruining something. It's about a real genuine good thing. Won't be like, not all the time, but it won't be threatened by you using your voice and actually acknowledging what you need, in a safe container. And that's the thing. Like, you have to be able to speak up. You have to be able to ask for what you want, and the right person will be able to meet you halfway. Like, that is the truth. Situationships. So if you find yourself in one of these situations, as I mentioned, I think it's a really bad idea if you've been struggling with infidelity, cheating, trust issues of any kind. If you really struggle with relationship based anxiety, I don't think if somebody purposely is keeping it casual or ambiguous or vague, that it's the best kind of dynamic to find yourself in. I think if you're struggling with your confidence, really struggling with your self esteem, then this can really exacerbate it. And, like, I've seen it where it really helps, or it really impacts people's physical, mental, and emotional well being. And, like, it can really take its toll on you. So if you are somebody that knows that you're not a casual dater, if you're somebody that knows that you want a really secure partnership and you want to take it slow, but you want to be upfront and very vocal about what you want, please, 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 even if there's mad chemistry, mad sexual fucking bonding and experiences, and it's blowing your mind, do not settle for what you know isn't right, because it's going to cost you in the long run. And the thing is, the game stops when you choose to stop playing. And the thing is, once you know that it's not right for you, you can call this a day. You can leave. And I know it's not always easy, but you have to take ownership of your part within it, especially if they've told you Like it's like a take it or leave it situation. This is all that I'm prepared to give you. This is the terms that I'm prepared to connect with you on. So you have to show up for yourself in those moments. Whew, let me take a wee breath. So it was a bit of a ramble. But situationships become more and more common because of aspects of the way dating culture has become. We've got more language around the types of relationships that are out there. There's many people that are non-monogamous. There's people that are in all sorts of types of relationships. Within the dating space as well. Some people like to keep it casual because it gives them that opportunity to meet multiple people, to figure out what they want, to figure out what they don't want. And that's what I'm saying. It's not about just judging it, but it's about looking at who you are, your expectations, your standards, your values, your boundaries, tuning into the impact that this would have on you, communicating that, and then just actually observing whether or not this is the right person and having the confidence that they let that go. So I think one of the reasons that situationships have such a negative impact and can like be quite damaging to people is because it is primarily that ambiguity and that vagueness that causes distress, and it is that mishmash and mixed signals when somebody's saying one thing but they're doing another. 1 minute they're all loved up and they're giving you this idea that this is what they want and this could be something, and then the next minute they're ghosting you or they're dropping in and out of your life or they're wishy-washy and inconsistent. And again, because you're attaching and because you're hooking up and stuff, it's very dysregulating. It's like your whole kind of sense of your foundation within that connection is threatened. There's no sense of security. And the longer that this goes on over time, the more that this can create upheaval, dysregulation, anxiety, feeling out of control, not feeling like you've got a handle on the situation. And as I said, it stops you from being able to move forward. It stops you from being able to think about other people, other things in your life, because it becomes consuming. And the thing is, like all that emotional upheaval, all those highs and lows, that has a physiological impact that affects your sleep, it affects your appetite, it affects your sex life, it affects your stress, it affects everything. It can leave you exhausted. It can leave you with your personality, like you're not showing the true representation of who you are in your interpersonal relationships because you're in your head, you're overwhelmed. You're not able to think straight because of everything that's going on. And as I said, like when that's happening, you can lose sight of the self. You can lose sight of who you are, everything you have to offer as a partner. You can lose sight of your hopes, your dreams, your ambitions, your goals. Life can feel like it's at a standstill at times because you're just occupying all this fuckery, and you're in the circus with all the clowns, and you're trying to figure out like how the fuck am I going to figure this out? How am I going to move forward? But it's because all this inconsistency, it's because all this ambiguity, this vagueness, the highs, the lows, and not knowing where you stand, and it just brings things to a pause. And while you're in that space, you can't be growing. That's the thing. You're in that place of stagnancy, and it's so hard to be able to break that when you're in it without speaking to somebody. So I spoke about wasted time, like especially certain seasons in your life. Like if you've had a couple of relationships that have went tits up, like you're much more cautious of the time and energy that you invest in people. And this is the thing with situationships, they creep up on people. It can feel like it's a few weeks, and then it's a few months, and then it's a few years. And it's like, I've seen it where it's happened with clients where it comes in so fast, and it's like they're on this emotional roller coaster and they can't get off it because there's so many highs and lows, as I mentioned. But the time and the energy and all the fucking investment that was put on that person could have been put on the self. It could have been put on a partner that would actually showed up for them, where there was clarity, where there was security, where there was connection, intimacy, vulnerability, all those things. And that's the thing, that's what that's holding you back from if you ever find yourself in a situationship. Now, I did speak about intimacy within a situationship. Now, it's not to say that you can't experience closeness. Like you can have closeness in terms of proximity, you can have closeness in terms of like the physicality of it. And I did say the emotional distance that might be there. It's not to say that they might impart some of their stuff on you. Like I spoke about how you could end up holding space for them, but it's not that reciprocity. It's like the lack of them being able to hold space for you to be vulnerable with them, for you to be supported. That just might not be there. Um, and as I mentioned, one of the things that stands out in some of the cases that I've seen before, it can be a really fucking hard process to break this off with somebody, and it can be so overwhelming because it is like a death in a way. It's a form of grief, and especially if it's been in secret and you're carrying this in your own, you can't turn to your friends, or there's shame or stigma around who it is that you're meeting. Like you're going through this on your own. You're grieving a relationship that was maybe never public. You're going through all the hurt, all the fucking overwhelm, all the loss, all the anger, everything that's connected to that. And they might still be manipulating the situation. They might still be promising you the sun, the moon, the stars. They might be trying to get back into your life. They might still be trying to get the jump. They might still be trying to have that physical connection. You might have one foot in, one foot out as you're trying to navigate this. And often I've seen it be very, very messy, and it usually gets to an escalation point where something has happened that's profound that makes the person see it in a different way. And sometimes it can be just being in a professional space, talking about it for what it is, naming it for what it is, that gives that moment of clarity to be able to go, I'm not doing this anymore. Like I can't give this person any more of my time, my life force, my energy. Uh, Situationships in terms of self-esteem, self-worth. I mean, talk about compounding feelings and not feeling good enough, unworthiness, inadequacy. Um, because it's this idea of, well, if I was maybe more this, then this person would choose me. If I was less this, or if I didn't have these needs, or if I didn't, maybe if I did this, then maybe this would work. And the thing is, it's not about that, but we can often internalize this to make it about ourselves because it's something that we can control. It gives us something to fixate on. And I think anybody that's been in a situation for a long time will talk about the impact that that's had on the confidence. And as I said, all that time's wasted has held you back from being able to call in the person that could actually show up for you. And look, the longer that you're in this dynamic too, there's a level of self deception that comes into this because you're harboring massive feelings of frustration, resentment, potential anger, and all the other feelings that are underneath it because your needs aren't being fully met. You're getting aspects of your needs met, but you're also potentially dealing with a load of bullshit behavior that's going on as well. And the thing is, if you think about it, depending on what season you are in your life, you might be thinking about having kids. You might be thinking about, like, well, when I buy a house sometime, or when I live in this place, or when I travel, or when I do this with my career. And you're trying to map all these different things. You've got all that cultural expectation, you've got familial expectation, you've got your own vision for the future, and all that stuff's still there, boiling away in the background while you're dealing with this fucking shit show, while you're sitting with this circus trying to figure out how am I going to make this work, and yet I can't seem to get off the roller coaster. So it's a lot, and short, it's a lot. Pardon me. So ways that you can avoid ending up in this situation. So naturally, the first thing that I think is most important is having the confidence to be direct, and that means open, honest, and direct communication, naming what needs to be named, being upfront about your feelings, your intentions, your expectations, what you will and won't tolerate. And that also is the conversation around exclusivity. It's the conversation around what this is, where we're going. Do we want the same things? Now, timing is also a big part of that, but again, there's nuance to that. But avoiding it is never ever going to lead to a positive outcome. And anybody that's dealing with somebody that's actively stifling the conversation, shutting the conversation down, that in itself is a choice. And you should be looking at the consistency of that behavior over time. So if every time you try to bring this up, there's an argument, every time you try to bring this up, they're blaming you or reacting or making it up your problem, you have to kind of see that for what that is, because it's another form of avoiding the topic of conversation. So clarity around expectations. I spoke about just being upfront, very direct about this, because again, you're giving this person aspects of the self. You're giving them the boyfriend girlfriend experience. They're not having to do the commitment. They're not having to follow through, meet needs for you the way in which a proper partner would. So if you don't speak your expectations and you don't name them, we have to give the person the benefit of the doubt. They're not a mind reader either, but it's about you showing up for yourself and then observing and enforcing expectations and boundaries, provided they're realistic and you've spoken about what you actually need from the relationship. Because otherwise you're just settling for what you think you can get from that person. Tuning into the actual lived experience of what it's like to be with this person. So this is a bit harder. It's recognizing where you're falling into this idea of romanticizing what could be at the cost of what actually is. So if when you're around this person, you've got nice, like fucking loved up feelings, but then they're away, you're overwhelmed, you're dysregulated, you don't know what's happening from one day to the next. You might hear from them from one week to the next. There's inconsistent communication, there's inconsistent behavior, they're dipping in and dipping out of your life. One of the things that's really important about that is just having a very honest reflection with yourself about what is this cost and what is the impact that this is having on me entertaining this relationship. Like, how does it affect my health, my well-being, my lifestyle, my sleep, my stress, all these different things? Like, how do I actually feel as a result of being connected to this person? For the most part, say I only see him or her for a few hours a week, or maybe even once a week or once every 2 weeks or whatever it is. What is the cost? What is the impact that that's having on my life? What's the toll? And am I prepared to pay that going forward? Like, why am I choosing this? and looking at the impact that it's having, and not just fixating on the idea of, well, if they would just be this, or if I could do this, maybe then we could make it work. It's about being honest with yourself and actually recognizing that this may or may not actually be really good for you in your life. So along with expectations, communication, naturally we're talking about boundaries. So boundaries would also fit into that, your standards, your values, what you will and won't tolerate. But look, boundaries are one of those things that are always going to be relevant, especially in healthy relationships, but more so in relationships where you can kind of see somebody's taking the piss or they're taking you for granted. Like, it's on you then to enforce them once you've communicated them and you've been upfront. If they're neglecting them, they're disregarding them, or they're violating your boundaries, you have to stand over them. You have to enforce them. And if you don't, you're undermining your own credibility, and they don't really have any kind of incentive to change. But it's one of the things that you can control, and it's one of the things that can, if you lean into it and you have those conversations, that can maybe reveal that person's intentions and save you a whole pile of time and energy and hurt staying in a relationship like that. That also leads to self-reflection, looking at your own values, looking at what you actually want, from a relationship going forward, and actually checking on with yourself and like, what the fuck am I doing with this person in this relationship? Is this person even right for me? Do we even have the same things in common? So like that's a compatibility conversation as well. Do we like the same things? Do we have the same values? Do we want the same things for the future? You know, is there cultural differences that could be a factor that you've maybe overlooked here? And I think within that as well, it's not losing yourself in any kind of relationship interaction. It's about not losing yourself, but more so in a situationship where it can feel all encompassing. It's like, maintain your self care, maintain your friendship groups, maintain your support network, take care of yourself, prioritize your own well being. Because at the end of the day, if you're giving and giving and giving, and you're feeling taken for granted and exploited, or this is causing you a lot of stress and upheaval, one of the best things that you can do is take a step back from it and actually attend to the self, take care of yourself, and become resourced, so then that you can actually have clarity around how to act and going forward. Um, and I think if I'm being totally open and totally honest about it, most of the time, if you implement some of these things like the boundaries, the communication, your standards, taking care of yourself, pulling back, prioritizing yourself, it's very likely it's going to kick off. It's very likely the person's going to challenge you, ghost you, or dip out of your life, and that could create an abrupt ending. And that can feel very, very overwhelming in the moment. You might be like, fuck, well, if I hadn't done that, maybe the relationship would still be working. But you again have to come back to what it's costing you, in terms of your friendships, your relationships, the impact that it's having on your mental, emotional, and physical well-being, what it's holding you back from in life in terms of what you're actually looking for. And again, if you speak in your values, you speak in your expectations and your boundaries, is such a low barrier of entry for somebody to sack you and disconnect and move on, then to me it's one of the best things that you can do is like speak up, because you're seeing then in real time the level of value that that person has for you. And like, it is tough, it is hard, but it's you advocating for yourself, it's you showing up for yourself, it's you showing that you value and respect and love yourself, and that you're operating from that place, and that this isn't enough. Like, you're deciding that this isn't enough, and if they react in that way, that you have enough sense of self to really go no more. Um, and as I said, it's not always that clear cut. Especially if there's emotional manipulation, there could be emotional abuse going on. There could be secrecy, shame. There could be ways that they've got you to compromise in your morals, your values, different things to keep you in this dynamic. And sometimes what I would encourage people to do is reach out and talk to a professional, get a safe space, get a non-judgmental space, talk about what's going on. It'll give you clarity, it'll give you support, it'll give you a bit of resource and a bit of encouragement to be able to trust yourself to exit this or to navigate it in a more empowered way. And look, the thing is, again, when we talk about situationships, there's all kinds of language that comes in. People talk about it being like a low barrier, like a low form of casual dating. I don't see it the same way. I think casual dating and situationships are slightly different things. Casual dating, there is that lack of commitment, there is that ambiguity, but we're talking about intention. We're also talking about consistency, and we're also talking about impact. Casual dating over a shorter period of time, like, again, I think the communication, there's space within casual dating for communication to not really rock the boat, but I think within situationships, communication threatens the entire element of the dynamic. There's that inconsistency between words, behavior, how the person's showing up, how you're being treated, the needs you're trying to meet, all those different things that are going on. And I think also there's that element of secrecy, there's that element of it just being centered around the physical element, the sexual element, and how that impacts on mental health going forward. And the thing is, you need to just trust yourself. You need to recognize, like, what the fuck is this costing me? Why am I still choosing this? Why am I still entertaining this? And what is this holding me back from? Why am I letting this person have access to me only in their terms? And look at the damage and the harm that this is causing me. Look at the stress that this is causing me. Because you deserve better. That's the truth. Like, we all want a relationship where the person can show up for us. We all want a relationship where we can have our needs met, and we shouldn't have to settle for a piece of somebody else. You know, whether they're in a relationship or not, or if they're meeting multiple people, or if they're just messing you about. Like, that causes more harm than any of the benefits that you think that you're going to get from this person longer term. So if you've any thoughts on this, or if you've ever had any experiences on this, message me. I would love to interact with you on social media. You can, message on the podcast. You can share your thoughts, share it with a friend. If this is you and you're in a situationship and it's been going on for a while, get in touch. It doesn't have to be with me, but I would love to help you. I would encourage you to speak to somebody. If you haven't got the friendship group around you, if you haven't got the family network around you, go and speak to a professional, because, as I said, this can be a minefield to navigate on your own. And I'm also very aware that it's never really as simple as it seems. There's often a lot of moving pieces within this, and depending on the personality of the person that you're dealing with, it can also be quite dangerous. And planning ahead, planning a safe exit, and having the confidence to be able to implement it is a couple of different things. And I think professional support in them situations can be invaluable. So I hope you enjoyed the episode. If you've any thoughts on it at all, reach out to me, interact with me on social media. I would love to hear what you thought. And thanks for listening.